The D-backs are set to square off against the Texas Rangers. So what lessons did they learn from their series against the Philadelphia Phillies that they can apply here in the World Series?
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Listening to who? Always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer. So check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com to see all my latest work. I've been hosting Locked On Diamondbacks since 2020, and now we get to see the D-backs face off against the Rangers in the World Series. I'm so excited for today's podcast. We're going to be doing a little three-man show, actually, with Locked On Rangers host Brice, Paterik, and Locked On MLB host Sully Baseball in segments number 2 and number 3. But before we get there, I first want to talk about, I want to do a little preview myself, solo preview, D-backs versus Rangers, and talk about things that we learned from the series against the Philadelphia Phillies, lessons learned that we can apply in the World Series. I can't believe I get to say that. D-backs and the World Series. So let's talk about some lessons that this team learned from their NLCS. The first lesson they learned, Ketel Marte is the most consistent postseason performer in Major League Baseball. Ketel Marte now owns the longest hitting streak to start your postseason career at 16 games. Marte has been a stud this postseason for the D-backs, coming through time and time again. And if you just look at that Philly series, he had 1, 2, 3, 4 multi-hit games out of 7 against the Philadelphia Phillies, where he won the NLCS MVP. Marte just came through repeatedly for the D-backs. Of course, had the walk-off in Game 3, delivered big knock after big knock in this series. It felt like when Ketel Marte was at the plate, if there was someone on in scoring position, he was bringing them home. And if there was no one on, it felt like Ketel Marte was going to hit a double to put himself in scoring position. So far, his career postseason slash line, 371, 389, 657. And in the NLCS, he had a 387 average with a 987 OPS. Ketel Marte has been a stud this year for the Arizona Diamondbacks in the postseason, and he looks like the most consistent postseason performer going right now. And we're going to need him to match some of the offensive weapons that the Texas Rangers have with guys like Adolis Garcia and the Corey Seagers and the Simeons of the world. Next lesson, Corbin Carroll is a big game player. Really struggled those first 6 games of the series, but even in Game 6, Corbin Carroll did get a hit, and he did score one of the runs in that game. Then, of course, in Game 7, Corbin Carroll came through in a huge way for the D-backs. 3 for 4. 2 of the RBIs went to Corbin Carroll. 2 of the runs scored went to Corbin Carroll. And most importantly, Carroll had 2 stolen bases. Carroll is a stud. He's going to run away with the Rookie of the Year voting. He's going to get some MVP votes. Those first 2 rounds of the postseason, Corbin Carroll was electric for the Arizona Diamondbacks. I was saying he was arguably the best player in the postseason after those first 2 rounds, because against the Cubs, against the Brewers in the wildcard round, his slash line was 571, 667, and 1143. In the second round, it was a 300 average with 1100 OPS. He was dominant those first 2 rounds of the postseason. He was 7 for 17 when it came to the hits. But in the NLCS, he only had 6 hits total, but half of them came in Game 7, and another one came in Game 6. Corbin Carroll, big game player. Would like to see him get started a little bit earlier in the World Series. Don't wait to Game 6 and Game 7, but best believe if the D-backs can extend the World Series, Corbin Carroll will be the guy in the back half of the series to take us home. Next lesson learned. The answer backs are alive, but scoring early is still key. We saw the D-backs repeatedly come back in this series against the Phillies. We saw it in Game 7 when they were down, entering, I think, like the 5th inning or something like that. We saw it in Game 4, the game I was at. The D-backs were down like 3 runs, entering the 8th inning. Like so many times in this series, the D-backs were down and were able to battle back. So many times this postseason, we've seen the answer backs. We saw them on a big display against the Milwaukee Brewers. And coming back to Arizona, Game 3 on, basically, we saw the answer backs alive against the Phillies. And the answer backs are great. I love the answer backs. You look at the D-backs offense this postseason, a lot of their runs come from the 7th inning on. But this D-backs team looks the most dominant when they're scoring early. When you see what they did against the Dodgers, knocking out Kershaw early, knocking out Bobby Witt early, or at least getting 4 home runs within the first 3 innings like you did in Game 3. You saw what we did against Philadelphia in Game 4. When you put these teams on their heels early, yes, teams like the Phillies, Dodgers, Rangers all have great offenses, but when you start in the hole, it just puts a little bit more pressure on yourself to make something happen. And the D-backs are the best at being down in the hole, making stuff happen. But if they get to play with the lead, that's when the D-backs are truly scary, because we know they could come back from any deficit. But when they already get to play with the lead, with how their pitching has been recently, it makes the D-backs feel almost invincible. Next one, slow down the top of the offense to cut off the snake. That's what we've seen the D-backs do specifically in the last 2 series, right? You slow down the Mookie Betts of the world. He went 0 in the NLDS. Freddie Freeman had 1 hit because he beat Zach Gallen on a single to first base. That's all those 2 guys did. Then you fast forward to the Philly series. What was happening early? Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, they were hitting home runs. I was coming on the podcast and I was saying, stop pitching to those 2 dudes. They're too scary. They're too dominant. They're too dangerous at the top of the lineup right now. Feels like they're just on fire and they're going to smash every pitch in their zone. The D-backs, to their credit, never stopped pitching to those guys. By the time this series got back to Arizona and back to Philly the second time, those guys cooled off a little bit. And you look at the stats for Schwarber and Bryce Harper the last 2 games, really disappointing stuff if you're a Phillies fan. So I think the D-backs have to continue to cut off the top of the snake, cut off the head of the snake, rip out the Seagers, the Simeons, and the Garcias, and that will give the D-backs a pretty good chance and opportunity to win the World Series. Another lesson learned, we don't need to short rest pitchers. One thing that I've learned from this postseason that I've been kind of surprised with from the D-backs is their pitching is kind of good. Like we saw with the Philadelphia Phillies, putting Zach Wheeler out there in short rest on Game 7. Like, the D-backs just don't have to do that. Your number 3 starter right now is as locked in as anybody in the postseason. And you also trust your bullpen right now. We saw the Phillies against the D-backs bullpen game. The D-backs bullpen game was good. And then if you're somehow able to get it to the 6th or 7th inning, you could do extended innings with Kevin Ginkel. The combination of Ryan Thompson and Sal Frank makes you feel pretty good as well. So the D-backs don't need to do short rest because the back end of their rotation with the Brandon Pfaadt is looking good. The bullpen day is working, and the back end of the bullpen is working too. So I think the fact that the D-backs don't feel like they need to throw out a Zach Gallen or a Merrill Kelly on short rest, you can actually trust the pitchers on your staff. I think that makes you feel pretty good right now if you're Torey Lovullo and Brent Strom. How about this lesson that we learned specifically at the end of that Philly series? Speed is still a major weapon for this D-backs team. I don't know why Torey Lovullo forgot that. I don't know why we stopped sending dudes. I guess you didn't want to be overly aggressive in the postseason. Maybe we got too conservative. We were scared of getting thrown out at one of the bases. But in the last 2 games, the D-backs stole 9 bases or something like that. Like, Corbin Carroll is going, Christian Walker. Like, it felt like anyone who got on base had an opportunity to go. They were just reading the timing of these Phillies pitchers. And it's like, that's what you should be doing. Your hashtag is embrace the chaos, and we barely saw the D-backs create any chaos on the base paths the first 5 games of the NLCS. This was a team that I think finished second in the NL in stolen bases. They got speed galore. Corbin Carroll, tier 1 speed. Alek Thomas not far behind him. Christian Walker is savvy when it comes to stealing bases. Marte, Perdomo, those guys aren't slow. Neither is a Tommy Pham or Gabriel Moreno. They can at least go from first to third and a ball to right field if you need it. They can score from second if you need it too. Like, this Dbacks team has so much speed, and I think they forgot that speed was a weapon the first 5 games, started to use it more in the last couple. So let's see more team speed in the World Series. How about this lesson? You should just start Alek Thomas every day. I don't care if there's a righty, a lefty on the mound. I don't care about the situation. Fun fact for everyone, Alek Thomas this postseason has the second best OPS at 865. He leads the team in home runs. And Alek Thomas has only 9 strikeouts, which I don't feel like is a ton. 8th on the team in strikeouts this postseason, which is like fine. So like Alek Thomas has been really good for this team. He's come through in the slugging department, which is not his strength. Thomas has not been a power bat all season long. He has not been the slugger the D-backs have wanted him to be. And he was never profiled as a slugger. But so far this postseason, he's turned into a legit power lefty. And the D-backs could definitely use some more power from the left side. So it's like, start Alek Thomas every day. I don't care about if there's a righty or a lefty on the mound. Put Tommy Pham or Gurriel at the DH or do whatever you need to do. But I think Alek Thomas has to be a starter every day because he's quite literally one of the hottest players that the D-backs currently have in their lineup. Next lesson, love Gabriel Moreno in the number 3 hole. I thought he looked really comfortable there, and he's someone I just trust in those big moments. There was times earlier in the NLCS, specifically when it was like back in Philly, I didn't like the swings that Gabriel Moreno had, but I think he is a clutch guy. I think he is someone that gets up in those pressurized moments like we saw him in Game 4, give the D-backs the lead, and I just think in those kind of situations late in the game, I do trust Moreno, and I like him in that number 3 hole, a solid contact hitter. Yes, he might strike out from time to time, but overall, I think his hitting tools and fundamentals are pretty sound, and so I do trust him in that number 3 hole. But it's someone that I don't trust high in my lineup, because next lesson, we need to move Christian Walker down. I don't know if I could do it anymore. Christian Walker in the number 4 hole for the D-backs this postseason. It just hasn't been good. Torey Lovullo is going to give him the cleanup spot the first 2 games of the series, no doubt. But once this series goes back to Arizona, if Christian Walker does not do something the first 2 games of the series, I'm not even giving him a chance to prove himself in Arizona. I would have seen enough. Drop him down to like number 6 in the lineup, number 7 if you have to, just because I think he's hurting the team way too much from his lack of production in the number 4 hole. Same with this next guy, but instead of moving him down, let's just sit him. Evan Longoria. Everyone's like, he helped us win the wild card round. Yes, he might have done that. That was a long time ago. That was 3 rounds ago. That was a lot of baseball ago. And so Evan Longoria, he just hasn't been that effective. Even in that wild card round, it wasn't like Evan Longoria was batting 400 or putting up some insane stat line. Like in the wild card round, Evan Longoria had 1 hit. So get off this. Evan Longoria saved us early in the postseason. Yes, he might have had a couple of moments, but for the most part, Evan Longoria has not been that helpful of a contributor, at least from an offensive standpoint. So many times he comes up to the plate and just like, yep, this is an easy out. Like it almost feels like we're back in the pre-universal DH days with Evan Longoria, just because I have no confidence that he's going to do anything at the plate. It almost feels like there's a pitcher at the plate right now. So sit Evan Longoria. Then the final lesson that I had from the NLCS is that Geraldo Perdomo is a stud, and he was definitely deserving of his All-Star nomination this year, because if you actually look at Perdomo, he's kind of the forgotten guy in this lineup just because he's the number 9 hitter. That's usually reserved for someone that's not that good or just someone that you put down there who has a little speed just in case they get on base. It's like the top of the lineup restarting, right? That's what the old cliche is. But Perdomo against the Phillies in this NLCS was kind of on fire. From Game 4 on, when this series was back in Arizona, you look at Perdomo's stats, he was really good. Game 4, he got because he got his first hit of the series in game 1. He went 1 for 3. If you honestly, I'll just go the game by game log for Perdomo in the NLCS. 1 for 3. And that first game, he also had the home run, don't forget, and 2 RBIs off Zach Wheeler late in the game to make it feel like the D-backs had a potential chance of coming back in game 1. Game 2, 0 for 3. Game 3, 0 for 3. But look, game 4, 1 for 4, run scored. Game 3, 2 for 4. Game 4, he was 1 for 4, run scored. Game 5, 2 for 4. Game 6, 2 for 4, run scored. And then game 7, 2 for 3, run scored. Perdomo, last 3 games of the NLCS, not double-digit hits. At least 2 hits in each of them, multi-hit games in the last 3 games of the NLCS, and 5 of the 7 games he got a base hit. Geraldo Perdomo was a stud in the NLCS, and I want to give him his flowers because I feel like he's the dude that I use as the measuring stick for how this D-backs offense is going to perform. I trust him from his batter's eye. Like, I think when Perdomo swing at a pitch, it's definitely a strike. And when he's taking something, it's definitely a ball. And I usually use that as a measuring stick for how this offense might be. We saw the D-backs offense wake up those last 4 games, and not surprised, it's when Geraldo Perdomo also woke up as a player. So when Geraldo Perdomo is cooking, it just makes the job easier on so many more of these D-backs position players. And when that's your number 9 hitter, putting in work like that, it's just going to put so much more pressure on the opposing pitcher when you know you got Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte right up after a little domo action.
Do you know what? How does a free World Series meal sound like? All the fixings you want with all the food and all the snacks. Well, guess what? This year, Ibotta is here to give you cash back and help make sure that your World Series spread is complete, because who wants the chips without the dip? The best part of any baseball food being spread out are all the things, all the different sides and all the things you dip into. With Ibotta, you can make sure that everyone's favorite side dishes is ready to be eaten while you get some cash back yourself. Look at ball games like this means get-togethers of all your friends coming to the house, watching the game. But you don't have to spend all that money on the spread without getting something in return. With the Ibotta, you can have your cake and eat it too. Now, this World Series is going to go into November. We all know it. And starting November 1st, for the 4th year in a row, Ibotta is giving you 100% cash back on all your food and all your groceries. Just add the offers in the app to redeem for everything you need to make your feast complete. All you have to do is shop at your favorite retailers and upload your receipt. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items from produce, personal care, and pantry goods. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. And you can also earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too when you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and many more. Download the Ibotta app and use code MLB to get 100% cash back on your groceries starting November 1st. Just go to the App Store or Google Play and download the free Ibotta app and use code MLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use the code MLB. Didn't mean to step on the bumpers.
You're fine.
Hey, let's talk about, we got the series between you two guys here. And it's funny, there's no real villain in this series. You know, the brash Phillies are out. The hated Astros are out. We have 2 cute and cuddly teams, 2 underdogs. Sorry, Brice, but you know, there's an underdog. You know, this was
No, I like it. I like the underdog. You know, that no one believed in us.
Hey, in mid-September, both the Diamondbacks and Rangers were out of the playoffs. And 2 years ago, they were...
Good thing the playoffs don't start in mid-September.
I know. And 2 years ago, your teams were 100-loss teams. I'm looking at you, Angels, These two teams were able to take 100 losses and flip it to the World Series in 2 years. You've had Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout for more than half a decade, and you're like, I don't know, maybe we can approach 500. Anyway, let's talk about the two teams left standing. Millard, what are you most nervous about going into the series? And we all know who your game 1 and your game 2 starters. Who you got game 3, or is it going to be fought again?
I think it has to be fought with how he's pitched so magically, right? And historically during this MLB postseason so far. And I just think that the thing that I'm most nervous for entering the series is this magic that the D-backs have displayed, is it just going to disappear at some point, right? Because the D-backs are playing way above their expectations level. They've been playing above their head their whole postseason with how their offense has been able to battle back. Obviously, they've been doing that the whole year, but doing it against teams like the Phillies with dominant offenses and the Dodgers and the Brewers. And then your pitching has been phenomenal from your rotation to the bullpen. Like, at some point, is the clock going to strike midnight and this D-backs team turns back into pumpkins? I'm hoping that's not the case, because going against this Rangers team, the thing that scares me most about the Rangers, talking with Brice Paterik before the podcast, is that lineup. We talked about it yesterday. I'm a guy that leans offense. I look at sports teams, and that Rangers lineup just reminds me of what we just went against in this Philadelphia Phillies series, because that lineup is so deep and stacked. And you talk about villains. I don't even think our Adolis Garcia is a villain in Major League Baseball right now. I had him on 5 fantasy teams. Like, I'm pro Garcia. This man has won me money in my leagues like the last couple of years. So there's not a player on the. I think there's probably one player on the Rangers a bunch of people hate, but outside of that, dude, I'm pretty sure everyone is pro everyone on both of these teams. So I just need to make sure the D-backs have to keep doing what they did against the Phillies the last couple games and what they did against the Dodgers. They were able to cut off the head of the snake, the top of the lineup. They were able to really shut that down against the Dodgers in the last couple games against the Phillies. If you can slow down the Seagers and the Simeons and the Garcias of the world, the D-backs will have a chance in the series. Get to that bullpen, because, Brice, I want to know, are you still feeling a little scared when you see that Rangers bullpen come in later in the games? Because we know the answer backs love to score runs 7th inning and on.
Well, to tell you, to illustrate that point, while I was at Game 7 and the Rangers threw in Aroldis Chapman with an 8-run lead in the 8th inning, I was terrified out of my mind. I said, you fools, don't give them hope. They like this man. They tee off on this man. They have success against this man in this building. Even with Jose Leclerc on the mound with an 8-run lead in the 9th inning, I was still kind of trembling in my boots. And I love Leclerc, and he's been great. But and Josh Boers has been amazing. But yeah.
And before we get back to you, Sully, I just want to I'm going to end the narrative right here about the underdog Texas Rangers with the 4th biggest payroll in Major League Baseball. I don't want to hear about, I can't believe they're here. They got one of the most expensive rosters in the sport. They got stars up and down that lineup, the rotation. You're talking about an underdog story, a team that we did not expect to be here. You better end that sentence with the Arizona Diamondbacks. That's all.
Well, it's funny. It's funny. All of the narrative ball about the Astros being like, "Oh, the Rangers bought their team versus built it." Well, I mean, the Rangers payroll this year, according to SpotTrack, is 245.5. Wait, hold on, 250 million, and the Astros 237 million. But
yeah, right.
They also kind of it's also misleading, because it includes all $43 million of Max Scherzer's salary, which the Rangers are not paying $43 million for Max Scherzer right now. So that would bump them way, way down. There's also $12 million of Jake Odorizzi, $10 million, I believe, of which was paid by the Braves. There's also $30 million of Jake DeGrom on the IL. That's all theirs. But like, it's really like, and you look at the active,
they're paying that one.
Yeah, they're paying that one. But if you look at the 26-man payroll at the end of the season, when John Gray and Max Scherzer were on the IL, the Rangers 26-man payroll was $148 million, which would have been 18th behind the St. Louis Cardinals. So like, there's a few guys that are big money guys, but like this narrative that like the Rangers bought everybody, like they bought a few guys that are expensive, but for the most part, it's a lot of homegrown youngsters on both these teams.
May I say,
Go ahead.
I hate the narrative of they bought it because that's what the team's supposed to do.
Yeah.
The teams, every team is owned by a Scrooge McDuck person who has enough money to send their great grandchildren to law school without getting a scholarship.
No. So actually, you might have missed this in the newest CBA. Actually, only the Texas Rangers can spend money on good players. Everyone else, if they do that, they will be shot and shamed for.
Well, the Astros have homegrown players like Justin Verlander, like Jose Abreu. You know, they got players who just came up through what nonsense. The ownership is. There's a lot of things I'm going to talk about in a later episode this week, but there's a lot of things we have to determine what are we getting outraged. Are we outraged that it's the same teams winning every year? Okay, we got some new teams. Oh, no one wants to see them. Oh, our owners aren't spending any money. Hey, we're going to spend money to try to win our first championship in team history. Oh, way to go. Way to buy it. Well, you got to pick one. You can't be outraged at everything. The Rangers and their manager did what every sports team wants their ownership to do, to say, we're not satisfied being a 100-loss team. We're going to spend some money and put a good team on the field. So, yeah, you can't – how can you get mad at the Rangers for doing what fans want them to do?
And look, even though I love all those graphics that show how much each win is worth that the D-backs spend versus every other team, guess what? Every D-backs fan going to this offseason is like, you better add to this roster. Go out there, add a couple big bats. Go get a legit, another starter in that rotation. Like, you shouldn't sit on your hands when you had such a cheap team make it to the World Series. Now it's the time to go all in, spend some money, and really max this roster around young stars like Corbin Carroll.
And hope that they stay healthy.
Yeah.
And speaking of staying healthy.
Yep. Haven't really worked with that bumper too much. But yeah, if you're talking about staying healthy, the best thing you get is Jace Medical, because the Jace case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You can also customize your case and add additional life-saving medications based on your unique needs. The Jace case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get a Jace case is fill out a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of our board-certified physicians, get ongoing care from our physicians on any treatment-related questions. Doctor created, doctor recommended. So go to jacemedical.com and enter code LOCKEDON at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON at jasemedical.com.
Now, we jumped on, get the banner out of there. We jumped on about the worries about the Diamondbacks, about the Rangers bullpen issues. I'm sorry. It is, I really think this is going to be an intriguing series because the Rangers do jump on the starting pitchers. They've jumped on wonderful starting pitchers this whole postseason. And the Diamondbacks jump on people's bullpens. So I have a feeling you may see a game where the Rangers go up 5-0 and the final score is 6-5. I'm not telling you which one wins. What are you most confident about in your scoring, and which person do you think is has the most pressure on them?
I think the Rangers have the most pressure on them, honestly, because the Diamondbacks, they have been both teams are underdogs, and the Rangers just came where they're just the underdog of underdogs in every single series. And but now they come in and they're the home field team. And they're
the big boys.
They are the big
payroll. They're the big mean Rangers.
Exactly. Yeah. They're the big market, the big whatever the TV executive care about or whatever. And both these teams, I think the Diamondbacks swept both their first series, right? And then went to 7. Oh yeah. So these teams have won and lost the exact same amount of games. Like basically went about it in the exact same way. They both went down 3-2, and they both went on the road into allegedly very tough road ballparks and won the final 2 games. But I'm confident in this Rangers offense of scoring early. I mean, the one thing this Rangers team, the last time you and I did a crossover, I talked about the Diamondbacks threw a what's it called, bullpen game, and that's the one thing that shut down this Rangers offense in the regular season is they just like could not hit against bullpens. And so the first couple of games of that series in Houston, the Rangers jumped out to an early lead and then couldn't quite tack more on, but held on. And then that's the thing that was most encouraging to me about Game 7 and also a little bit in Game 6 is that the Rangers finally got to the bullpen of the Astros, which is a very good bullpen, and got justice against Brian Abreu for his suspension, not suspension nonsense in the form of an Nathaniel Lowe home run. So this is going to be interesting. I mean, these Rangers guys, I mean, they've been good. The three arms that they trust back there in Spores and Chapman and Leclerc, but they've been ridden really, really hard. So they might be getting a little tired of having to throw them so many times. So this is going to be such great theater and such great baseball because they're two very different offenses that are both very good.
Yeah, it feels like which of the two forces, the Rangers scoring early versus the D-backs scoring late, which one is going to give? Because the D-backs starting pitching, it's definitely going to need to step up in a big way to slow down that Rangers offense. And that's why the guy that I think has the most pressure on is the guy that is considered the ace of the D-backs rotation who struggled in his 2 starts against the Phillies. Zach Gallen is the man I'm watching for to set the tone in Game 1 against the Rangers, because you look at Game 1 against the Phillies, Zach Gallen set the tone, but he did not set it for the Arizona Diamondbacks as Kyle Schwarber led off the game. First pitch home run. 2 batters later, Brice Harper also hit a home run. Zach Gallen got kind of shelled against the Phillies, and it's not too surprising because that Phillies offense is loaded like we discussed. So I need to see Zach Gallen get off to a good start against this Rangers offense. The pitcher I have the most trust in on the D-backs rotation right now is Merrill Kelly. So yeah, he could get crushed by the Rangers, but I also feel pretty good heading into that start. With Zach Gallen, despite him being the ace of this team, he's the guy I feel maybe even more nervous about than Brandon Pfaadt, who's a rookie for the D-backs, with how he's looked his last 3 starts. So I think it's a big test for Zach Gallen, a guy who was the first half Cy Young Award winner, who slowed down the final few weeks of the season, kind of hit a wall. Was good his first couple turns through the rotation in the early part of the postseason, but struggled against that Phillies offense. So with the Rangers having a similar offense to Philadelphia, I want to see is Zach Gallen, if he could set the tone early as the D-backs Game 1 starter.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be an exciting series. I am going to ask you both to make your prediction.
Oh, ooh!
I don't do predictions
already.
I'm staying away with the D-backs this postseason. I haven't made one prediction on anything. I'm going to keep it that way. I'm enjoying the ride. Win or lose with the D-backs, it's been a fantastic season. So I just want to keep enjoying this ride. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy.
Cowardly.
Yeah. Hey, Philly fans want to make predictions. We'll let those guys make predictions. We don't do that.
I said Rangers in 5 last series. I was wrong. I was almost very right. I felt very confident. But hey, they won. That's what matters. I'm going to say Rangers in 6 in this one. I'm not going to underestimate the D-backs like I did the Astros. But I really underestimated Brandon Pfaadt. Like when I was like talking about like how well the Rangers match up with different teams, and watching his starts, I'm like, okay, I apologize. It's that meme. I apologize to that man. I was unfamiliar with your game. Like I was unfamiliar with Brandon Pfaadt's game because we saw, I believe it was his major league debut against the Rangers, and he got. It was back in May, that first series that we played against each other in Texas. It was maybe not his first start, but it was one of his first couple of starts in the big leagues, and I think the Rangers shelled him. And
they probably did. If you saw early Pfaadt the whole regular season was just a home run pro, like a Lance Lynn. Like, he had nasty stuff, but he gave up a lot of home runs. So he's been great this postseason, but against that Rangers offense, like anything is possible, and I'm scared he could go back to those home run problems.
I mean,
okay. We got to wrap this episode up. We're hitting the clock right now.
No, we got a few more minutes, Sully. We got like 3 more minutes. It's fine.
Well, I'm going to make my prediction.
Okay, make your prediction.
I predicted the Diamondbacks would get swept in the wild card round by Milwaukee. I predicted that the Dodgers would have their way with them, and I thought that the Phillies were just better and we're going to beat them in 4. And I have been wrong every time.
Do it again.
Diamondbacks in 7.
I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to.
Diamondbacks in 7.
Oh, thank you, Sully. Oh, your doubting has given this Rangers team power, It really has. And
Let's give it both of your teams. I thought you were both getting swept in the first round.
I'm sure you just wanted to pick, nobody in sevens. You can
No, I have to pick somebody. I have to pick somebody. Well, look at, and you know what? I've picked you two out of all the podcasters to be picked you both at random to be part of our World Series preview. And if the Diamondbacks win the World Series, I want a webcam on Paul Goldschmidt to see. He wanted to be on a winner. He wanted to be on a winner. He got traded away. And the team he got traded away from that he came up with was the man for. It got to the World Series before the Cardinals. Was there a bet on FanDuel for that? Well, look at
before we close this out, I want to issue an official apology to Millard Thomas for the things that I said to you after the end of the regular season. I was hurt. I was spiteful, and I was upset that your Diamondbacks could not take one game off those stinking Houston Astros in that last series of the regular season.
I remember
but your D-backs, they knew something that I didn't. They knew that they were doing the Rangers a favor, giving them that extra motivation to fly to Tampa and to, reset themselves. So actually, I want to thank you.
Is that how it works?
That's exactly how it worked. They knew what they were doing, and they were looking out for me personally and the Texas Rangers. And I want to thank them for letting the Astros feel very good about themselves for, a couple of weeks and then get knocked around at their home ballpark in Game 7. Because without the D-backs teeing that up for that, you set up the alley for the oop that I could not see coming. And I want to thank you for that.
Yeah. We knew the Astros were worse at home, so we want to set that up for you, Brice. You're welcome.
There you go. Well, look at, we got a World Series starting this weekend. Brice Paterik of Locked On Rangers. Where can people find your show?
You can find my show wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. We are also trying to get to 3 billion. Was it 2 billion subscribers that you're going for?
2 billion subscribers.
Well, we're going for 3 billion subscribers. We're a little bit short of that. But you can find us on YouTube wherever you get your podcast. Find me on Twitter at Brice Paterik, and you can find the show at Locked On Rangers. We got the actual Locked On Rangers, not the underscore like the hockey team.
Millard, tell us.
I will say I was trying to craft a tweet to mention Locked On Rangers yesterday, and I was pretty scared I was going to tag the New York Rangers. So thankfully, I was able to do that right. Follow my personal Twitter account, @CreatorThomas24. Look up Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter and Instagram. Of course, we're on all your podcast platforms. And please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube.
And we're at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or whatever it's called now, on Instagram. And I'm your pal Sully, but Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Previewing the World Series with the pennant winners that we all picked at the beginning of the year. On behalf of Brice Paterik, on behalf of my buddy Millard, I'm your pal Sully. This has been the Locked On MLB, Locked On Rangers, Locked On Diamondbacks crossover. Let's play ball.